Now, there's been a boom in men as primary caregivers. 1 in 14 men are now the main caregiver for their baby. A study has found that the father is now primarily raising their child in 7% of cases, which might not sound like a lot, but it was 0.11% 20 years ago. Well, I'm joined now in the studio by Vincent McGovern. He's a fatherhood and parenting expert and author of The War on Dads and Children, How to Fight It and Win. Vincent, always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
This is great news. OK, 7% is not a lot, but it's a great start, it's a great build, and it's indicative of a changing mindset. Fathers, especially like yourself, you're a stay-at-home dad, you brought your kids up. More and more dads want to be positive role models and get involved with their kids.
This is a pattern that's followed in the Scandinavian countries, where nobody really passes much attention who is rearing the children as long as it's been properly done. And children benefit enormously from having a dad heavily involved in their lives, because when financial circumstances allow, sometimes the mother, increasingly, is a professional, earn a lot of money, earn more than the father. So it makes sense commercially that he is the primary carer, doing other bits of work and what have you. And the children who are primarily reared by fathers seem to have a more outward going attitudes and more, I don't want to say risk-taking, but more willing to take chances and be less introvert.
And it's certainly true to say that there are still barriers. You mentioned Scandinavia, and as you mentioned, there's equity, there's equality in paternity and maternity, but in Britain we still find that blokes, dads, get 2 weeks' pay, and it's 172 quid a week, whereas oftentimes mothers get much more, 39 weeks, 90% of their average weekly earnings. And so we still have a system that systemically favours the mother and discourages the father from being actively involved and forces them back to work.
That is just the taxation as well, plays a factor here. But the real discrimination, of course, is in the agencies when there's any difficulties in the marriage, who will do so much to facilitate the removal of the father, especially almost, I feel, if he's been the primary carer. So what you have demonstrated there with the paternity, maternity, it's just an example of the undercurrents that cause so much division and separating father from children, with all the damaging metrics that demonstrates for children.
And in your book here, The War on Dads and Children, just hold that up. It's an excellent book. You talk about the family court system and how it prevents fathers from being actively involved, which shatters this illusion of the media concept of the one-to-way dad, the feckless dad, the dad who couldn't care less. In actual fact, many decent fathers are being prohibited from being involved in their children's lives.
It is not so much the family courts alone that are the primary factor. It is the gateway agencies. The gateway to the family court is so heavily anti-father. The domestic violence agencies, social workers, including the court social workers. And that means that an enormous amount of absolutely decent fathers, once the accusations come in and they're facilitated and promoted at taxpayers' expense, on a gender pattern only, that the absolutely decent father who losing out. And what I feel so sick about is I have seen so many photographs of children before and after the separation, and the innocence has gone out of their eyes. Their eyes have become hard. Their childhood has been damaged, if not removed.
And also, there's a bit of a war on the nuclear family in general, but there's many measurable ways in your book that shows that children with actively involved fathers and mothers, two parents, are the best solution. And lots of ways. We did a thing yesterday on knife crime, and it's like 85% of men in prison grew up in fatherless homes.
Correct.
In a nutshell, would you like to see more fathers involved with kids, and how could we go about facilitating that?
It's quite simple. All we have to do is copy the model across the channel. The Scandinavian model, the Finnish, Swedish model, where there's far more father involvement with children. Children don't consider the father to be, has been, or they can't even mention his name in the presence of the mother. You have in Finland, for example, had a coalition government of 5 female leaders, and they brought in an automatic presumption of 50-50. Because as they said, it's for the children of society. We have to get rid of the gender war and move towards what I call gender neutral and partial professionalism. By all means, of course, quite often the mother is the primary carer, will remain the primary carer, that's fine, but the children should have no less than 35% of their free time with the fathers and the fathers' families, which is their family as well.
Vincent McGovern, the author of The War of Dads and Children, thank you very much for joining us on GB News. Let's hear it for the dads. Let's hear it for positive masculinity. You know, good dads give great outcomes for children. Let's hear it for the dads.